Hello and welcome back to the Movie Thoughts Podcast. I am your host, Dominick, and welcome to 2024. That's right, you get a welcome from me. We are back. This is the first episode of 2024. My last episode, whoosh, wow, December 21st, 2023, where I talked about the movie The Iron Claw, which I liked and I still have yet to see again. But I do want to. It's an emotional roller coaster if you haven't seen it. Before that, covered Wonka and a slew of other films, obviously. 2023, not a bad year. Thought I was going to break 100 episodes in 2023, but I haven't. I am up to this episode 99. So the what is that called? I don't know. The penultimate would be like the finale or whatever. I'm not going to get into definitions of words, but we're going to talk about something a little different today. I haven't done, as I said, a new movie. A couple of movies came out recently that I wanted to see. Ferrari with Adam Driver, directed by Michael Mann. I still have yet to see it. Night Swim. It's a new horror film. Looks a little cheesy. Not getting the best reviews from what I've seen. I might check it out at some point. Kind of looks. It looks like. Do you remember? Are You Afraid of the Dark on Nickelodeon? It kind of looks like there was an episode back in the day, and this has probably been. It's probably been compared to this online, but there was like this thing in a swimming pool. Scared the shit out of me. Scared the fucking shit out of me when I was a kid. That's what this movie reminds me of, but I didn't see it yet. Like I said, not really hearing the best things about it, so I don't know. I like Wyatt Russell, obviously Kurt Russell's son. Maybe I'll see it at some point. I think it's James Wan. James Wan did it, but or somebody did it. Maybe he produced it. I don't know. Aquaman 2. Not really run out to go see Aquaman 2, honestly. Aquaman 1 was alright. I mean, I gotta rewatch it. I remember liking it. I have it in my collection because I wanted to for some reason, have all of those DC movies, which they're now, that's it, they're done, but I'll check out Aquaman 2 at some point. But speaking of Aquaman, which we could do a little segue, right? Because the man we are talking about today is a bit of an Aquaman himself, and there's a double meaning there. If you used to watch Entourage back in the day, remember Entourage? It was good. It was good at the time. I remember having a lot of fun with it in the first 4 seasons, and then like something about it just went to shit. But in that show, this was way before the actual Aquaman movie came out, but there was a James Cameron's Aquaman that was like a fictional when he was in it, and Vincent Chase was going to, and then Entourage got very repetitive, right? It was like every episode, Lloyd, Ari's running around saying things, and it's just, I don't know. I got sick of it. It became the problem with Entourage, and this is why I'm talking about Entourage. This is the segue that I got into, and now I got here. My brain got to Entourage, so this is how ADD works. The problem with Entourage is it became like the episodes were like nothing happened. They were like non-episodes. Like you'd have 25 minutes or whatever it was, and then it would just be like them having sex with girls and being at a party and drinking. And that was cool in the beginning of Entourage, right? It was like, all right, they got rich, they got fame, they got money, and all that stuff was cool. But I tried watching some Entourage over the years. Recently, my brother was rewatching it, and I popped in and watched a couple episodes with him, and it's fine. I remember the good things about it. Then they made an Entourage movie. That fucking thing sucked. But let's not go down the rabbit hole. If this is the first time you're listening to this podcast, as I said, welcome. It gets a little distracted. I get a little distracted sometimes. But that was my James Cameron Aquaman segue. And the reason I'm, as you see from the name of this episode, it's James Cameron Ranked. And the last episode I did ranked of a director, I think the only other one I did at this point was Christopher Nolan. And that was when Oppenheimer was coming out, and it was just like I had all the Christopher Nolan movies in my head. and I was rewatching a lot of them. So in that same regard, I've been watching a lot of James Cameron movies. The thing that triggered it was the 4K restorations. A few of his movies recently got new 4K restorations. The big one, Titanic. Well, not really. That was a big one. That's the more, the most famous one probably. But the bigger ones, in my opinion, were True Lies and the Abyss, because those two movies have not, Aliens as well, the sequel to Alien, that got a new 4K transfer as well, but those two, True Lies and The Abyss, they have really not been available in a good quality product in a while, because I have the old DVD editions of True Lies and The Abyss as a physical media collector. I have The Abyss on I watched it years ago. It's like the special edition. It's an official DVD. It is like the worst quality. It is so dated. It's got to be from like the early 2000s. And not only that, but both True Lies and The Abyss, they're not like anamorphic widescreen. So when you watch it on like a TV, a new TV from today, you have to like adjust it in a way. Like you have to go on like your settings and stretch it, because the black bars, it looks essentially, it's like very, I don't know the aspect ratio exactly, and I'm not going to look it up, but there's a couple of DVDs from back in the day I have when, DVDs were new, that didn't have that anamorphic feature. And the anamorphic feature is obviously like when you watch it on a wide screen, it would adapt to it, so it would stretch accordingly. You have to like stretch it yourself. You have to go on like your settings and either zoom in, and it's a fucking disaster. And then the movie looks like shit. Both movies don't look good to today's standards. We've come a long way. Obviously, 4K is the new fucking thing, and it's when you watch on streaming, there's 4K and there's physical media 4K, and obviously physical media always has the edge. They're able to store more data. The thing you notice about, like, I mean, I dabble on this podcast about physical media. I have fucking loved physical media since I was a kid. VHSs, I always, like, whenever I liked a movie, I would buy a movie when it came out on VHS. Then I would buy a movie when it came out on DVD, and I've evolved with it. Nowadays, I'm staring at my giant fucking Blu-ray, DVD, 4K collection right now, and it's like, you become a little bit of a slave to your collection, right? And nowadays with streaming, it's like, all right, like, is it practical to have all these movies? Probably not. Do I love to stare at them and I love my collection? Yes. And I still do buy a lot of physical releases, but I also dabble in the digital, because digital is convenient, obviously with streaming, but especially when there's deals, and I'm sure I've talked about this on the podcast, I dabble in the digital sales, the digital purchasing. When it's a particular movie, I know I have to get, right? There's some movies, to name a few recently, Indiana Jones 5, right? Had to pick that up physical. It's a must, because I have the other Indiana Jones. I want to complete it, right? I got the Steelbook that goes with the other Steelbooks. Another movie I recently picked up that not a lot of people liked, but The Flash. Michael Keaton as Batman, had to have it in the collection, right? I have the other Batmans. I enjoyed that movie. I'm not going to get to that. But yet again, another movie I got physical, Avatar, Way of the Water. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Because you want to have the best quality, the best sound. I've noticed as the years go on, streaming has gotten better. The quality is very good. Especially if you watch what I've noticed. I'm going to go down a little bit of a streaming rabbit hole, but this will come into play after, because the availability of some of the movies I just mentioned right now. I've noticed that Apple streaming, if you go down the streaming thing and you buy digital movies like I do, there's Movies Anywhere that essentially links all those movies, save for a couple of studios that aren't participating yet. I'm not going to get into that, but most of the movies do link up. So if you have them on Apple, it'll link to Vudu, it'll link to Movies Anywhere, it'll link to Amazon, YouTube, wherever the hell your collection will go with those, right? As I said, certain movies won't, but I've noticed that I buy a lot of movies on Vudu, digital, and I've noticed that like Vudu has very good quality, but Apple, especially with the 4K, it seems to be a little bit better than Vudu, and it seems to resemble the actual physical copy uh, the most closely to what it is. Now, the big thing with that, you if you listen, you sit there, and I've done it myself because I'm insane. You could sit there, you could look at a Blu-ray versus a 4K versus whatever streaming, right? Disc to streaming, and the inconsistencies, they're very, very minute. Most people aren't gonna notice them. You could sit there, and I've sit there and watched streaming 4K that it looks incredible, and like popped in the Blu-ray, and I don't notice a big difference. It's more, when I notice it more is like something like a Christopher Nolan movie, because the changing aspect ratio, a lot of streaming doesn't have that when you're purchasing those movies. So that's something to keep in mind. But the big thing I've noticed is sound is the thing that you'll probably notice more. But then it's like, I have a sound bar. I watch, fucking Terminator 2. We'll get to that in a minute. And, you blow out your eardrums. How loud does it have to be is the thing. I mean, so, streaming versus digital. And the reason I bring up streaming, because True Lies, The Abyss, and Aliens are all coming to physical 4K. If you're a physical collector, they're coming to physical Blu-ray and 4K in March, right? But this is how they get you, because they're coming out in March, but they are now available on streaming. Right now, you get them on Apple, you get them on Vudu, you get them all those places I've named. So this is what kicked off my James Cameron kind of like marathon that I've been doing, because they were on sale on Vudu. I don't know if they're still on sale. They were $10 each. It was like $9.99 each, right? So I was able to get True Lies, Aliens, and what the hell was the other one? The Abyss. I don't know why I keep, and Titanic as well. Titanic I have on an older Blu-ray, but I was able to get that one digital as well, just to check out the new transfer and see how it is. Because it's like, how many fucking times, like, especially like over the years, I've purchased so many copies of the same movie physical, and from time to time there are some that I go and I'll get a physical release again. I'll be like, all right, this is my third copy of Christmas Vacation. This time it's 4K. But then there's other movies where I'm like, all right, you know what? Let me just try to get the fucking digital, and now I have it in 4K digital, and I have the Blu-ray, so I have my hard copy. And I'll play that game sometimes. Maybe when it goes, like, there hasn't really been a sale for Titanic. Titanic is available physical right now, 4K, but I'm going down a rabbit hole, as you see, with the physical and digital. But the reasoning is, like I said, because those movies, if you want those transfers and you're able to get them on sale like I did, you could see what I'm talking about, and you could watch those movies right now with those transfers. Because as I rank these movies, I'm going to get into the transfers, but the physical releases will be coming next year. I'll see. Like, I'll probably try to get them when they're on sale, just to have the physical, because I'm a sucker, and I do that. I just do that. I'll buy digital sometimes cheap, and then I'll buy physical. Like, I was able to get Killers of the Flower Moon digital recently because I wanted to watch it again, 4K, and I got a little cheaper, and now I'll probably buy, especially if there's like a Criterion or something. But watching these movies again, first of all, the transfers. There's been some mixed things on the transfers. There's something with 4K, right? Sometimes when a 4K transfer is done, it is done like beautifully, and it's like, oh, this looks great. They honored the way the movie looked. they just updated it and they kept the film grain if it was an older movie and whatnot. And then sometimes they fucking wipe the shit out of it where it looks almost too clean. It's funny because there's a few Schwarzenegger movies now that have been done like this in the bad way. One of them was Predator. Predator looked very waxy. I remember even on the Blu-ray, very waxy look. Terminator 2's 4K, which supervised by James Cameron, it looks a little too clean. I mean, it looks like it's one of those things yet again. It's preference. It's do you prefer watching the movie as you grew up with it, film grain and inconsistencies and whatever. Then you watch the 4K and it's very clean. It's been like scrubbed. Now I don't know if James Cameron's been doing Avatar movies now nonstop, right? So like he's got this eye now for digital and the way that those characters look. And maybe that's why. Maybe he just got like that's what he wants these movies to look like, and he's going whatever. I mean, I have the Terminator 2 4K in my collection. It's like I'm gonna watch it in 4K when I watch it. Is it gonna be like? Is there some sequences that maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger's face looks a little waxy? Yeah, sure. But the sound's great, and it does not. Listen, I have an older DVD as well too. I have an older Blu-ray. I could always pop that in if it's really annoying me that much. But they definitely over cleaned those movies. Now the thing is with the new transfers. So I've watched all three of those new transfers that I mentioned that aren't available physically yet, and the Abyss looks good. It looks pretty damn good. Obviously cleaned up, but seems like it's got the the look of what the film's supposed to look like, grain and stuff like that. Aliens as well seems to look pretty good. Didn't really notice anything that looked out of place and then True Lies is the one that a lot of people are shitting on because True Lies looks very waxy at times. Now it's like your eyes get accustomed to it. The more you watch it, you're gonna fucking forget about it, and you're gonna get used to what you're seeing. But there are times when like Tom Arnold's face, or Arnold Schwarzenegger's face, or Jamie Lee Curtis's face just doesn't look natural. Looks a little bit too scrubbed, and that's unfortunate. And especially because, as I said, just like the Terminator one, they have been supervised by James Cameron. Now, there's people saying, yet again, this episode's turning into digital, 4K transfers and whatnot. But I get to be geeky about that sometimes. And from what I'm reading, like AI is used sometimes to cut corners on these transfers, and that's why these are kind of like over scrubbed, if you will. Now, we don't know if when the 4Ks come out, if there's going to be any difference. There probably isn't because these are the transfers that these discs are probably being manufactured as we speak with. So only time will tell. But as of now, listen, this is even saying what I just said before I get into the ranking, this is the best you're probably going to get True Lies to look right now. As far as like if you want to watch True Lies and you want to watch a fucking HD version with good sound and good picture on a TV of this time, from this time period, a TV that it's going to utilize all that stuff on the TV, this is the way to go, right? If you pop in that old DVD I have, it's going to look like fucking shit. It's going to look like shit for other reasons, right? And then your other alternative is not saying that I condone it, but there's the pirate way, right? There's people on the internet that make their own versions of things, maybe other transfers that have been made HD. I know for a fact about a year ago I was watching True Lies on something that I may have stumbled upon on the internet, and it was a transfer, it was an HD transfer, so I don't know, that's an option. There's always that option. I believe I watched The Abyss like that at one point too, because I could not, I popped in that DVD about a year ago or so, and I was like, I can't watch this fucking movie like this anymore with the non-anamorphic, but there are options. But that's transfers aside. let's get into the James Cameron ranking. Now, James Cameron, I've talked about him on this podcast before. Obviously, he's done some classics. He's not somebody who I ever considered one of my favorite directors, but then like as I watched or rewatched a lot of his movies, I started to realize like James Cameron really he doesn't fucking miss. He doesn't miss. He's honestly every film he's directed is good, and there's varying degrees of good, and but like everything's good. Most of them made pretty good box office waves as well. Obviously, a few of his movies are on the highest grossing list, which is incredible. So I've said it before jokingly, but he's made some kind of pact with the devil because like every movie he makes nowadays just makes a killing. Um, but James Cameron, like rewatching his filmography and really like appreciating the things he's done. Obviously, been a huge Terminator fan. Those first two Terminator movies, that's all you need to see. Like there's the other ones, and you could watch those, and that's fine. And I have them in my collection. I've watched them. And when I do watch Terminator, I tend to go and watch the other ones as well. And they're fucking ever changing timelines. There's some good, there's some bad stuff in those. But like Terminator 1 and 2, I mean, that's it. Like my wife has never seen Terminator 1 or 2 or any of the Terminators, and I'm thinking about showing her the Terminators. And honestly, I think I'm just going to stop at 2 unless she's really compelled to watch the others because they just go all over the place. But those movies are classics. Obviously Titanic and Avatar 1 and 2. Now Avatar and Avatar the Way of the Water, which I've talked about that as well. I was somebody who wasn't the biggest Avatar fan, right? I had it in my collection. I saw it. I watched it a couple times. And, like, it wasn't until, like, in later years when I started to appreciate it more. And now after seeing the second one, I'm like, I'm in it. I'm in it. I'm ready for the other 3, 4, 5, 17, however the fuck many he's going to make. I'm in it. It's compelling. It's visually stunning. And, like, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I've gone into this as well. And, like, I don't Star Wars, I love Star Wars, and listen, I'm always gonna watch the Disney Plus shows. I'm always gonna go to it. Mandalorian's great. I like all those Star Wars shows for the most part. There's some that are stronger than others, but Star Wars is kind of like as the years go on, it's kind of becoming something else, right? It doesn't quite feel like my Star Wars anymore, and like something like Avatar, I I feel I got an excitement there for the next Avatar after seeing this last one, where it's like, all right, it's something to look forward to, and it may not be Star Wars, but it's a new franchise that I could, you know, get behind and have anticipation for. But without further ado, 22 minutes into the podcast, let's get into the 8 films of James Cameron. And we'll talk about the best, and we're not going to say the worst because they're all good, as I said, but we'll talk about the weaker ones and things that I don't think. Honorable mention, or honorable mentions. His first film, technically, not talking about a short film he did, was for a film called Piranha 2, which is kind of like a B movie sequel, Roger Corman, sequel, and it's an honorable mention because honestly, I don't think it's fair to put those movies with this movie that was kind of his first feature-length movie. It's not really up to par, obviously, with what he did later on. So that's an honorable mention. Also an honorable mention, Alita, Battle Angel, because he was pretty much, it's like his movie, but Robert Rodriguez directed it. I enjoyed it. I know there didn't really do great box office wise. He was all caught up with Avatar, so he kind of handed it off to Robert Rodriguez, who did a good job. But I don't know what's going to happen with a sequel. I don't know if there's going to be a sequel. Last I heard, it was like the studio kind of wanted him to direct it, which I don't know if there was any truth to that or what. Maybe because they just feel like, as I said, this guy sold the soul of the devil. All his movies that he directs make money, so you got to have that directed by James Cameron on the poster. I don't know. You would think with the produced by James Cameron and the backing that he did for it that it would still make money. Another honorable mention, Ghosts of the Abyss, which is a documentary he did a couple of years after Titanic. And listen, if you ever wanted a sequel to Titanic, if you ever thought there'd be a sequel to Titanic, this is the closest thing you'll get to a sequel to Titanic, because it's a documentary where him and fucking Bill Paxton literally go in submarines and go check out the Titanic underwater. And like fucking Bill Paxton, the real Bill Paxton, he's not, it's a documentary, he's not playing the character he played in Titanic, but he's essentially doing that. And it's cool, it's creepy, it's weird, it's sad, and it's a nice little after, Titanic watch, because you get to see that real diving thing. Because it's fucking, as I said, fucking James Cameron's fucking Aquaman. He's going underwater. He's submarines and shit. Really, cool guy. Honestly, you could love him or hate him. He's a little cocky. He's a little cocky, James Cameron. But I guess he has the right to be cocky. But he knows his stuff. He's a smart guy. But it's funny about James Cameron is like, even when we get into his movies and like, I gravitate obviously towards people like Scorsese, Tarantino, Nolan, and they tend to be more of like, especially somebody like Scorsese, kind of like an artsy director, right? Like James Cameron's not that director. He's like a blue collar guy. He just feels like blue collar, and I think it's from his background. He apparently used to be like a truck driver before he started getting, and you feel that through his movies. He's not like worried about, I don't know. I could just, there's just something about his movies that feel that way. But yeah, he's a very capable director. But let's get into the I guess ranked worst to best or best to best or whatever the fuck. Good to best. All right. So at number 8 in the James Cameron filmography, it's gonna be True Lies. And this is not bashing True Lies in any way, but True Lies is probably, if I ranking it, it's his weakest film. Compared, but look, when we compare, True Lies to, but True Lies is a fun fucking movie. Now it's his most comedic movie. I mean, it's action comedy. You got Arnold, in his fucking prime. You got Jamie Lee Curtis. You got Tom Arnold doing some comic relief, and it's just a fun fucking movie. It really is a fun movie. It's action packed. And this is the film that James Cameron chooses to do in between Terminator 2 and Titanic. And obviously Titanic was this huge undertaking. He was probably already working on Titanic at this point. So you could see it's a little bit more lax, the movie, as far as like the subject matter. As I said, it's humorous. It's based on a French spy comedy film called La Totale, and I've never seen that, but I'm sure it's very similar to that. James Cameron wrote the screenplay, he adapted it, and his buddy Arnold's in it, as I said, and they're having a good time. Bill Paxton's also in this in a smaller role, and it's a fun action movie. It's a fun action movie from the 90s. As I said, probably one of Arnold's better movies, outside the Terminator films, his more comedic movies. And it's engaging, right? You got a young Eliza Dushku, whatever the fuck you pronounce her name in there. Enjoyable film. One of those movies that was always on TV. I feel like, along with Terminator 2, just always on TV as I was a kid and watching it. And I remember just watching bits and pieces of it, but rewatching it with the new transfer, it's like, I always knew it was a good movie, but I was like, this is it's a solid action movie. And that's the kind of guy James Cameron is too. He could just do a movie like this, which you have fun with it. It's kind of like, it's not a dumb movie, but it's, at times it's a brainless action movie. And then you could do a fucking movie like Titanic or Avatar, where it's a little deeper and there's a lot more emotion and stuff like that. But enjoyable. Years and years, I thought they were whispers about sequels and never happened. Now James Cameron's fully engulfed in Pandora, so I don't think it will ever happen. Probably for the best. I think there was a TV show recently. I didn't watch it, but I think Cameron produced it. But that's number 8. Of course, True Lies. So moving on. Number 7 in the James Cameron filmography. That is 1989's The Abyss. So this movie it's kind of like, if there's one movie that's forgotten in the James Cameron filmography, I think it's The Abyss, right? Because this is his third movie, and he does the Terminator, He does Aliens, which is a sequel to Alien, and he creates this great sequel. And then he does The Abyss, which some of it, like, I don't think it bombed at the box office, but it didn't hit the way he probably wanted it to. There's a couple of different versions. There's a special edition that's basically 3 hours, and then there's a shorter theatrical edition. There was also apparently a lot of drama on set. The movie stars Ed Harris, Maria Elizabeth Mastrantonio, who you'd know from Scarface as Tony's sister, which I'm not going to quote her lines in that, and of course Michael Biehn and a slew of other people. Michael Biehn obviously previously worked with Cameron on Terminator and Aliens, and this is a great movie. It's kind of like it feels like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I was rewatching it recently, and like really feels like Close Encounters underwater. You have those vibes. Yet again, blue collar vibes in this. Guys working on the water submarine. Ed Harris is just fucking doesn't get more fucking 90s and blue collar than Ed Harris, and he does a good job. There's it's a movie that, I mean, I am not really gonna sit here and explain the plot, but if you've never seen The Abyss, there's a certain pattern in James Cameron's career. You see these movies he does, and like every movie kind of that he's done, whether it be Terminator, even Aliens, and this, they have like elements of each other, right? This has the whole water thing, and then later on, he does Titanic and he does Avatar, Way of the Water, and it's just like feels very reminiscent of those things. But yeah, I heard you could read up and watch videos on the grueling shoot, putting his actors through hell. A lot of the actors hated him after this. A lot of the actors disowned the movie. Ed Harris, for one, was like really pissed off. I think he almost drowned. James Cameron almost drowned at one point. Real fucking crazy shit. Filming in the water, but like this is the thing with him, right? He's kind of like a perfectionist, and he puts his cast through hell, which is probably not the right thing to do, but he makes a damn good movie out of it. He did the same thing with Titanic. I think Kate Winslet had some problems with the stuff he was requiring her to do as well. He's hard on his actors, but he comes up with some good fucking stuff, and like she worked with him again in fucking Avatar too, so I guess she didn't hate him that much. So, but I think Ed Harris hates him. I think Ed Harris, because of The Abyss, hates him. I think he refused to promote the movie or talk about the movie and stuff like that. But there is, as I said, there's a special edition that's slightly better than the theatrical edition. And there's a few of James Cameron movies, I'll mention them when I remember, that do have extended editions, which, extended editions, I always look at them like they're kind of like a supplement, right? The theatrical edition is the one that stands, the one that a lot of people remember. And then if you like the movie that much, there's extended edition, but they tend to be better. The Abyss is one of those instances, right? You go down the Lord of the Rings thing where like those fucking extended editions are so much longer. Are they necessary? Probably not. But something like The Abyss feels a little bit more necessary than something like that, where watch the extended edition. I would suggest that, if it's the first time you're watching, you want to watch the theatrical version, it's a little bit shorter, then do that. But there's also several editions of Terminator 2 and all that shit. But The Abyss looks great, as I said, on 4K, and it's a movie that's kind of like as I said, forgotten little lost gem. Recently they re-released it because of the new transfer for one day in theaters. I wasn't able to see it there, but watching it at home, it's good. It's good, and you see the stepping stone, right? You see he's working with a lot of visual effects that are going to come into play in his next film, Terminator 2, and you see a lot of this stuff, filming underwater sequences and water sequences that are going to come into play later on in Titanic, and more recently in Avatar, Way of the Water. So it all there's like a certain trajectory in James Cameron's career, which it's cool to look at. It's funny because Tarantino talks about how he just wants to do 10 films because he wants to have that kind of clean slate. And I understand that. I don't fucking support Tarantino for doing that because I want all the Tarantino movies I could have. But you do see in a lot of directors, there's some kind of inconsistencies when they make certain films, when a certain amount of films, right? the fewer the films, sometimes there seems to be like a through line. And I think with James Cameron movies, you have that as well. You have that through line of seeing from Terminator all the way to Titanic, all the way to Way of the Water. You just see that there's a pattern. Now he's focusing on Pandora, as I said, so we're going to be seeing a lot more blue people. But The Abyss, definitely recommend it, and that's number 7. Next up on the list is number 6, and that is Aliens. Aliens, the sequel to Alien. Obviously, this was a big stepping stone for James Cameron because he does Terminator before this. That's a smash hit success, and then he does Aliens, which is a sequel to a Ridley Scott film, which is a classic in its own right, especially at that time, right? Because Alien came out, what was it, 70? Let me not get my fucking things all fucked up, right? 79. So this is almost 10 years later. This is 1986. He comes out with this film, and in the time when sequels are directed by other people and they're just not good, or they don't feel necessary, he takes Alien, and Alien is it's a straight up horror movie, right? There's an alien on a ship, it's killing people, it's in the dark, it's kind of like Jaws in space or something like that, right? Aliens, with the S, it's a fucking action movie. It's a fucking action movie, and it is fucking got a great cast. As I said, you got Sigourney Weaver returning, you got Michael Biehn, you have Paul Reiser, you got Lance Henriksen, you got Bill Paxton. Fucking game over, man. Game over. Action packed, and it's funny because I haven't watched the Alien movies in a while. All of them, whether it be Prometheus or Alien 3, fucking that fourth Alien movie. I haven't watched a lot of them in a while. And rewatching Aliens for the new transfer, I watched it, and then I was like, all right, let me watch Alien. I kind of did a backward thing. And honestly, I used to think that I liked Alien better. But now I really see the appeal of Aliens. And I just when I was watching Alien after Aliens, I was kind of I think I like the second one better. And that's really a testament to James Cameron and the screenplay and just his fucking flipping it on its head a bit and making it a different kind of genre of movie. And yeah, like I said, action packed, fucking kick ass, good characters, quotable dialogue, and impressive. Aliens is an impressive film, still holds up to this day. I know they're supposed to be making another one soon. The guy who did Evil Dead is supposed to do it, the remake. So hopefully it's good. I think it will be. They'll maybe do the Prey thing where they kind of strip it back and focus more on the horror aspect of it, and we'll see. But Aliens, it's even when you look at the way the series went after that, I guess not so much. I guess I don't know. Alien 3, kind of a mess. But even when you look at Alien Covenant, it's really just trying to be like Aliens at that point. But yeah, good movie, good sequel. And then next up at number 5 is Terminator, the original Terminator. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, Michael Biehn. One of those movies that's an absolute classic, right? This is the star-making role for Arnold. Just the quotable "I'll be back," all that shit. The score, right? And speaking of horror movies, fucking Terminator is a horror movie. It's fucking yet again, Terminator 2 is the action movie. Terminator 1 more similar to the original Alien, right? Because it's a horror movie. It's this fucking cyborg, fucking Terminator coming to kill Sarah Connor, and you're on suspense. You're fucking scared. You got the good score, as I said, and this is the first, as I said, the first big movie he really directs, right? Because that other one, Piranha, we're not counting it, but Terminator is a classic. For years, I've gone back and forth, and I've said, what do I like better? Terminator 2 is, some people regard it as the greatest action movie and stuff like that. And I definitely up there as far as top action movies. But then like I always felt like the original Terminator was a little bit forgotten. Um, it doesn't have quite as good effects as Terminator 2. Obviously, being years before, you don't get the same, liquid fucking metal, but you have some great prosthetics in there, some great makeup. Some of the stuff is a little dated, but as far as a movie, it still holds up. Waiting for a 4K of that because there really hasn't been a 4K. I know years ago they did a 4K scan of it on a regular Blu-ray, I think, and that looks great as it is. But I'm waiting for a 4K Ultra HD HDR copy of Terminator to come out. But Terminator is a classic, and I mean, what else can be said about Terminator? The original Terminator. It's the one that started it all. Next up, so what are we up to? Number 4, right? I'm halfway through the list, basically. This is where it gets a little tricky when you get into this territory because I think the next 2 movies are definitely interchangeable. Maybe even, just mood-wise, maybe the next 3 movies are interchangeable. So I went with Avatar, the original Avatar, because Avatar, as I said, I wasn't the biggest Avatar fan. It didn't really hit me until a few years ago. I was like, oh, this is a good movie, and I get it. I got, really throwing yourself in this world. I'm actually playing an Avatar video game right now that just came out on PlayStation recently, Frontiers of Pandora. But immersing yourself in this world, once you immerse yourself and you get into it, it is cool. It is a cool thing. It's enjoyable visually, incredible. Listen, could James Cameron have done other movies besides Avatar? Could he have done the first Avatar, the second one, and then maybe handed it off to somebody? Sure. I would have liked to see what James Cameron would have did besides Avatar, but we got Avatar, and I'm down with it. Now I'm down with it. Disney owns it now. It was 20th Century Fox, so obviously Disney's going to pump as much fucking money in it. You got Zoe Saldana in it. You got Sam Worthington. You got Stephen Lang, Michelle Rodriguez, Giovanni Ribisi. Great cast. And yet again, follows that kind of through line with James Cameron movies, right? The same kind of like fucking army fucking characters that we saw in like a movie like Aliens. You get some of that in there. You get some of all his movies, and it's, as I said, visually stunning. I mean, just like to watch it in 4K. The 4Ks are available. It's an incredible looking movie. There's a slightly extended cut, not by much, like 20 minutes. It doesn't add that much to the movie. I think if you've seen the theatrical, there is a little bit added, but it doesn't change the movie that much. Maybe a little bit more depth. I don't think there's an extended cut of the second one yet. I know they came out with a collector's edition recently, but it's not. There's only one version of that, it's a little over 3 hours. So I think that's enough. I think the extended cut of the original Avatar runs at about 3. Where the theatrical cut's just a little under 3. So, but either way, good film. Just incredible what he did, and the time he took, and just the guy just like he's always on the cutting edge of technology, whether it be, as I said, The Abyss or Terminator 2, and then what he did with Titanic, and then this, he brought it to a whole nother level, and that leads right into the next movie, the number 3 movie, and that is Avatar: Way of the Water. As I said, those are kind of interchangeable. Avatar, I got to give credit to Avatar because they did it first, but now the technology has advanced so much that like you watch Avatar 2 and you're like, fuck, now they're doing underwater shit. The motion capture's gotten even better. It's like everything's just crazy, and Avatar, it's a very simplistic story. I mean, I've told it before. It's very simplistic. You've seen the stories very similar, especially like Avatar: Way of the Water. As far as the story, it's stuff we've seen, right? But it's just the approach to the material and what he really does, and like to immerse yourself in Pandora. I still remember when fucking Avatar was coming out, and I was a James Cameron fan then too, but like I didn't think this movie was gonna make fucking money. I didn't think the original Avatar was gonna make money, and now you have this fucking gigantic film series with fucking Disney World's got its own section of it, and fucking Pandora and video games, and it's like fucking James Cameron, man, he pulls it off. But this second one definitely doubled down for me, like my investment in this world. And as I said, after seeing the second one, I'm good. Now I'm like, I'm ready for another Avatar. I'm buying fucking Avatar toys and shirts and shit like that and video games. I'm in it now. The first one didn't do that to me right away. It didn't, I was invested in it, but it was also a big gap of time between the first and the second. There was constantly getting delayed, constantly getting pushed back to the point of like, and we'll talk about it when we get to the film, which is obviously coming, Titanic. But, James Cameron has always been a perfectionist, as I said, and his movies have taken time, and he's kind of at times become a little bit of the butt of a joke, right? It's like people start doubting it, and I was definitely one of them. I was a little bit of a naysayer, especially when time after time Avatar 2 was getting delayed, but well worth the wait. Great movie. Coming in at number 3. Now, like this next one, right? It's preference. I could say, because it stood the test of time, that coming in at number 2 is T2, right? Terminator 2. And that's really the only reason that I'll put it above something like Avatar 2, is because it's been around since 1991, and it holds up. Terminator 2 holds up. It's a classic, just like the first Terminator, and it ups the ante of everything in that film, right? It shoots it up with steroids. If that movie wasn't filled with, testosterone filled Arnold Schwarzenegger running around trying to kill you, like this one blows it up, right? You got more explosions, you got 2 Terminators, you got Robert Patrick in there scaring the shit out of you, running with his fucking metal arms. It's a classic. I can't say it enough, but the movie it stands on its own without the first Terminator, just like Aliens does without the first Alien. You could watch Aliens and not miss a beat. You could watch Terminator 2 and you get it and you're invested. And as I said, Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, Robert Patrick, Edward Furlong, great cast, right? Running around. There, as I said before, there's several cuts of this on a Blu-ray. I don't know if the 4K one has all the cuts. I think it just has the theatrical. I got to double check that. But I have a Blu-ray that has like all 3 cuts. I think there's 3. I think there's like an extended, there's a director's extended. I don't know what the fucking all the difference is. There's some scenes that were taken out for time. But obviously, the theatrical one is probably the one to watch. There was a Terminator 2 ride in Universal Studios, well, a 3D show rather. And that was cool. There were scenes filmed, while they filmed the movie or whatever the fuck, or after they filmed the movie. It's like Terminator's impact on the world, and the fucking visual effects still hold up. There's a couple of movies from the early 90s that had that cutting edge technology, and they still hold up. Jurassic Park was one of them. Obviously, Steven Spielberg. And this is another one. Listen, there's some stuff that's dated. Some of the scenes you're like, all right, it's a little bit like the way he's fucking turned into metal is a little bit. I can see, some of the inconsistencies, but overall, for movies from the early 90s, like Terminator 2 still fucking looks good. And as I said, that Blu-ray, they cleaned it up a lot. They fixed some little inconsistencies here and there, but it's probably one of the better ways you could watch the movie. Obviously, if you don't like some of the way the grain has been wiped and stuff like that, you can go back and watch an older Blu-ray. But yeah, number 2 is Terminator 2, because you gotta give it to Arnold, and you gotta give it the fucking the thumbs up at the end, right? And number 1, you guessed it, because it's the only fucking movie left. Titanic, the 1997 fucking juggernaut, right? The fucking movie that made so much fucking money, and was only dethroned by Avatar years later. And I don't even remember. Did Avatar 2 dethrone Avatar 1? I don't remember. But fucking Titanic, right? It's a romantic fucking drama. It's based on the true story of Titanic sinking. Obviously, the characters Jack and Rose were created for the film. Leonardo DiCaprio, before he exploded. This is when Leonardo DiCaprio explodes, goes on to be one of the greatest actors out there, one of my favorite actors. But this is like the big stepping stone for him, right? Leading a movie with Kate Winslet. You got Billy Zane in there. You got Kathy Bates in there. You got a bunch of people in there, right? An ensemble. You got Bill Paxton popping up in there, fucking with California fucking surfer hair, fucking an earring, scuba diving. Love Bill Paxton. God rest his soul. Good friend of James Cameron. Always popped up in his movies. And this is a classic. But not only is this a classic, like, this is Cameron's masterpiece. Still to this day, this is a masterpiece. Now, I remember being a kid, because I was a kid when this came out. I was probably like fucking 8 years old, whatever, 9. And, like, you know, it's like, oh, it's fucking Titanic. You see it. You can see the girl naked. The boobs are showing. You know, and then you like, my sister loved Titanic. She see Titanic like 78 times in theaters. She had the 2 VHS. And I remember watching it as a kid and be like, oh, this is, you know, it's good. But it's good. Like, part of you had that, like, as a guy, as a boy, rather. And at that age, you kind of had that, like, oh, it's a girly movie and girls like it. But, like, I already at that time watching it at home and watching it in the theater, like, I was like, there's something else to this movie. And of course, you get older, you grow up, and it's a fucking great movie. Obviously, like, just there's a heart story, and then there's like the visual fucking, like, what this cost and what this took. And as I said before, he, James Cameron kind of became the butt of the joke. Recently, when like Avatar 2 was getting pushed back and stuff like that, there was a lot of naysayers, myself included. But like back in the day, Titanic was going through a similar thing, and they kept pumping money into it, and it became like, oh, it's gonna flop. Like, all the magazines and reports on it were gonna be like, oh, fucking Titanic cost this much. James Cameron's fucking. It was, people weren't expecting it to be this box office smash. Shit, they were expecting it to flop because this guy was pumping money into something that, frankly, like, nobody believed in. You know, at this time too, it's like, not that he didn't have a good track record, but it's like, you know, you're reaching for the impossible. But he pulled off the impossible. If there's one movie that gets locked away in a time capsule from the James Cameron filmography, it's Titanic. It has to be Titanic. I mean, as much as I love all his other films, Terminator and this and that, like, Titanic is the one that's like a crowning achievement, and everybody fucking knows Titanic. Everybody's like a universally loved film and a universally known film, and that's, it goes in the books, right? It's like one of those movies that sits on the shelves, years from now, right? Hundreds of years from now, this is going to be like the Casablanca. This is going to be the fucking Citizen Kane. It's going to be right up there with movies like that, Wizard of Oz and all that shit. Star Wars, the original, Empire Strikes Back. But yeah, that's all I gotta say about the ranking. I mean, that's James Cameron ranked. Titanic's a masterpiece. So we went True Lies, The Abyss, Aliens, Terminator 1, Avatar 1, Avatar Way of the Water, Terminator 2, and Titanic. As I said, though, James Cameron doesn't really have a bad movie. I mean, he's fucking... Look at his track record right there. Look at that right there. So you can't look at like True Lies at the bottom and be like, oh man, True Lies is a fucking great movie too. Not at the level of obviously something like Titanic. And I think I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I think I did a pretty good job of ranking those in quality, because you go from True Lies to Titanic, right? You could see that happening. But anyway, that's the podcast for today. That's James Cameron ranked. Go rewatch the James Cameron films. As I said, they're available for 4K. I'm not doing a promotion. I'm not getting paid for this, but they're available on streaming things, Amazon, wherever the fuck you get your streaming stuff, and they will be available physically in March. But Titanic is available now. If you want to go pop in fucking 4K Titanic, it's available now. If you want to fucking cry a little bit and get depressed and realize that these people died on the ship and Jack froze in the water, I don't want to talk about it. But anyway, that's a podcast. If this is the first time you're listening, thank you for listening. This was a big one. This was a long one. Haven't done a long one like this in a while. Check out the other episodes. As I said, did Iron Claw, did Wonka recently. Check me out on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at Dom Solo Reels, where sometimes I put up some funny, stupid videos. Episode 100 coming up. I don't know what I'm going to do. It might not be anything special. It's either going to be a special. I'll put it this way. It's going to have a 50-50 chance. 100th episode's either going to be something like special, like I'm going to focus on something special, Or it's going to be like I go to the movies Thursday and I go see fucking the Mean Girls musical. And I'm like, all right, this is episode 100. I got a gun in my mouth. And that's like, I don't know. We're going to just see how the week goes and what I end up doing. But anyway, that's the podcast. Check out my other podcast with my friend Ryan, the It's a Long Road podcast, which is a Rambo series podcast. We talk about Rambo. It's coming to an end soon because we're almost through the last movie, but you can go back and go listen to some fun episodes there. And that's pretty much it. So thanks for listening. Rate, review, subscribe, all that fun stuff on iTunes, Spotify, wherever the hell you listen. And yep, that's it. Thanks for listening. Have a good night.